it appears that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building. And as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
I just saw another plane coming in from the side.
You did. That was out of
yes, and that's the second explosion. You could see the plane come in just from the right-hand side of the screen. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway in downtown.
You got Chris and Sean with talking to the medias. We're going to be doing something a little different today. We're going to be talking about the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and I know this is kind of a very sensitive subject for a lot of people for a lot of obvious reasons, but as it is the anniversary today, me and Chris felt that it would be disrespectful to not talk about this to some degree today, and I think we just basically kind of wanted to kind of remember and kind of go over what life was like then and how it's changed and how this particular event changed us as individuals and the nation as a whole. It's kind of a hard topic to talk about, and you know, the more you think about it, the harder for me personally is. It's rough, you know. And for people that are really young today, it's like me and Chris's and everybody else's between the age of 20 to wherever. It's our generation's Pearl Harbor, and is the best way I can describe it. I mean, we went from my memory, the last time we got into a conflict on a large scale with another nation was during the first Iraq War with the first President Bush, and it was a bit of a walkover. I mean, we really just landslided and fired cruise missiles, and it really wasn't. I mean, even now, Chris. I mean, we're still, and they'll say we're not officially at war. We're still in conflict with these people, and it's the year 2015. My God. That's never been in the history of warfare, has been this continuously dragged on, unless we're talking about, I guess, the Middle East specifically, about their inner conflicts, which has been going on for thousands of years. So we don't have anything on that. But for me, I was really shocked when we got attacked. I had just gotten up the morning of the attack. I had just gotten up when the first plane had hit the first tower. I heard it on the radio. They were talking about it on the radio. And my first thought was that it was an accident. You know, a plane had hit the tower and it was just maybe limited. I hadn't been outside yet. I was just my alarm went off and it was the radio and I heard about it. And we actually had cell phones back then. So my girlfriend called me and said a plane hit the tower. But then I got to work. I lived right down the street from my work, and I actually was running a TV department in a place called Dillard's, which is a big department store. And I watched live as the second plane hit the second tower, and then I knew, and everybody else knew, that this was something else, and we were under attack. And then we started getting the reports of the hijackings, and the Pentagon got hit, and then it really started to sink in. But for me, when those towers actually fell, I can't even describe what I was thinking. Like, it was, you can't put it into words. Like, it became reality. Like, it's actually happening. Like, they actually fell, and we're at war, and we don't know who from, but it's not, because I know that the towers have been attacked before. I'm not sure if you heard about this, Chris. They had a bombing years ago, and it didn't really 90s, yeah, and it wasn't. I'm not to de-escalate the situation in that one in particular, but it was nothing like this. But what are your thoughts about the initial?
Well, I'll just keep it on that day. I mean, you already know a lot of my history, where from that I went to Iraq myself as a contractor. But before that, and without going into that story, on the day of, On 9/11, I remember it was a friend of ours, Jason Rodriguez. We were roommates at the time, and I remember waking up, and it was after. I think I was up late the night before, and I remember waking up, and Jason was already sitting there on the in the living room, just glued to the TV. And the first thing he looked at me and said was, "We're at war," and whatnot. This was after the second plane had hit, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. But I remember we stayed in all day, just talking about it and watching the news, and just kind of in awe of what was going on. Um, that's the majority of what I remember of that specific day. I felt like it was probably at the time, that moment, I felt like it was probably just something like maybe an attack just on New York. Then the Pentagon. Then the other plane crashed, and where the people fought, where the people fought back and whatnot. It was escalating more. I mean, you didn't know what was happening and how big it was, and how organized it was, and or what it was. And so you just sat there and you just did what you just could do. You just could only watch. I mean, it was out of your hands. I mean, me personally, I felt like it was out of my hands. I know that after the fact, there was a lot of people that firefighters from all over. I remember firefighters. Everyone, police officers from cities and from
guns
all
and
over
hoses.
from all over the country coming over to just swarming to New York. It reminded me of what we just, not to equate the two, but it reminded me of the trailer, the Batman trailer, where everybody's running away, and then when he's the one guy running, it's like the people, the bravest of us,
the real heroes.
The bravest of us all, the real heroes. They got up, and instead of saying no, I'm not going to. I'm needed there. I know that I have a job here. I'm supposed to be policing here or fighting fires here, but I know that we're needed there. We have enough people to stand by, but we're volunteering. We're going to go there from all over. I remember those news reports coming in from all over the city, the country, from people from as far as Washington State, all the way to New York, from California, to come over to help as they could in New York. And I thought that was pretty a testament of how humanity is. We're at our best when we're at our worst. I remember thinking that a lot.
Yeah, those guys really did show their stars and stripes. A lot of those guys, I mean, especially with if any of you guys out there watching knows anything about architecture and fires inside contained spaces, those firefighters went up in those towers knowing that there was a very likelihood that they would die. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that, but they just went in there anyway. They knew they were going to die, a lot of those guys, and they just did it anyway because they're the only ones who were going to do it.
Yeah. But I don't know if I don't know how much more that I remember from that day. I also remember and I guess the final thing I would bring up was something when I was watching the memorials of it, and what we did here locally, here in Houston. They talked about, and I'm sure this was talked about briefly all over the world, was that one thing to keep in mind, and one thing I think people are now starting to really pay attention to nowadays, which I feel like we kind of didn't. We kind of, at the time, I feel like we were banding together and we were kind of angry, and we were just looking for whoever did this, we were looking to take it out on and whatnot. But I'm appreciating the fact that nowadays I'm seeing on the news more where people are saying, let's not judge a whole group based on what those terrorists or whatever did. I mean, that's perverting the beliefs of another group. And I've been seeing that a lot more lately on TV, where people are getting together and they're like, we're not blaming all people of that
Judging
religion,
the actions of the many.
that whole religion, based on that grouping. But I remember in the beginning, it wasn't.
They were getting
like
attacked in the streets.
Yeah, exactly. There were a lot of them getting people of Muslim background getting attacked and picked on and whatnot, and people making light of it, saying were cruel things. But nowadays, with everything changing and evolving, and where people are just starting to calm down, and after all that money thrown in there and whatnot. I'm liking the fact that people are starting to say things like, hey, let's not make that same mistake again. I don't ever want it to happen again, but I'm hoping that if a situation or anything similar to it ever happens again, that maybe we will learn from how we reacted then, that we won't. It's inevitable how people are going to react, but I think we'll be a little bit better from what we learned last time, how we came together and how we grew from it. I think it's a shock that there's teenagers that are alive right now who were not born when it happened. That's the thing that's tripping me out right now. What do you think about that?
I think that, especially today being the anniversary, and for those who were not born before this event happened, I was 20,
Mm-hmm. I was
20 or 21 when this happened. I think that parents, grandparents, moms and dads, brothers and sisters, I think they need to sit down and watch, because this was at the time, and I still think holds a world record for the longest continuous newscast, nonstop world coverage. So the footage is out there. I think you owe it to your country and the thousands of people who died to give a little bit of respect and watch the footage and just think about it and just take it in and understand. Maybe not understand, but start in the direction of understanding or feeling just how significant it was. I mean, it was huge. And then for those of you who have not seen it, you need to watch it. You need to understand what it was.
Yeah, the world was a different place. It was very, very similar. I mean, you know how they say the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's one huge thing that a lot of people don't even realize. You have to really, sometimes people have to really think about this. And until somebody a couple of years ago brought it up to my attention, I didn't realize it because of how in your face it is now. And that thing is the presence of an airport. What are they called? The TSA did not exist. I mean, they had security, individual security at each airport.
Nothing like this.
But the TSA, they did not exist. It was an invention right after 9/11. Everything was.
Sometimes they pat you down.
I mean, but all airports had their own security now, their own way of doing things. They had like they were all on they had a sheet of music that they kind of all got on that was similar, but as a whole, they were all like independent. And then and whatnot. So the rules that the take off your belt rule that in Pennsylvania might not have carried over in.
I remember not having to take off my shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And now then after 9/11, when it became the TSA,
you got to take off your flip.
Yeah, exactly. When it was all universal, it all became universal in one thing, and the government took over. It's like, no, we're not. This is not going to be a state by state thing. This is a national thing now. Now they're all on the same sheet of music, and people don't. And it was so accepted, and it was so. Like, oh yes, this is what we need to, stay safe. It only took a few years for people to feel like the TSA was always there. I remember somebody pointed it out to me that they didn't exist before 9/11. That name, it didn't exist, and I was like, wow, it became so. It was almost like the internet or the smartphone. It became so accepted that people don't realize that it was so scared. Yeah, that now we knew we needed it and we wanted it. That it didn't exist before 9/11 and whatnot. So it's like I'm glad it's there and whatnot. It's just one of the little things that that people don't realize was one of the big things that was invented or created in response to 9/11. So a lot of things out there that did not exist in 2000 and during 9/11 that exist today because not because of it, but afterwards. But that was one of the things that really made me think, wow. Yeah, that's just a little something that always pops into my brain when I think about 9/11 too. But Yeah, that's I guess that's the last story, the only story I really much have about that day. What about you? Anything else?
And that pretty much about covers it. I just I want people to actually do a little research, watch some footage, take it in, give it a little bit of respect. Take 10, 20 minutes, take an hour, take 2 hours today out of your time, and actually, if you have kids who are of the appropriate age to watch this kind of thing, because I remember them showing footage of people jumping out of the buildings on live TV, and that was you were watching suicide jumpers on live TV, and people don't realize that they actually showed that stuff,
Yeah.
and those people had the most horrific decision to make. They're 80, 100 stories up. Do they burn to death or do they jump out of the building? Some of them jumped together and holding hands. I mean, it was so. Take your time today, guys. Show respect. Remember 9/11.